We no longer have cabinet ministers. Those positions are vacant, and I'll be speaking to Professor Susan Booysen in just about a moment. And of course, a little bit earlier on, we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing dignitaries and of course the nation as well, talking about the resilience of our democracy and basically saying it's once more being tested. What he also mentioned, basically saying now that the multitudes of voices that have been echoed in diversity, the people of South Africa have basically voted and made known their wishes and their concerns basically to them, as well as their expectations. Also saying that South Africans didn't give any of the parties, a single party, a mandate to govern them. So he says basically he'll be working with all these political parties to ensure stability and unity in the country as well. But certainly what has been taking place here at the Southern Lawns, you've had scores of people who came to witness this moment. They've been braving the bitter cold this morning, but it's a bit of a scorcher out here on the Southern Lawns this afternoon. And President Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, now officially being sworn in. He's going to make his way now to the Southern Lawns to address these multitudes that have gathered here. But I want to bring in Professor Susan Booysen. We'll talk a bit about the pomp and ceremony, Prof. Booysen, but a lot of the discussions now will be behind what kind of government, what kind of cabinet are we likely to see. All those positions, as you said a bit earlier on, some 30 minutes ago, cease to exist. Who will form part of this new cabinet? That's certainly what we're all looking forward to now.
Yes, indeed, Griselda. I'm sure that issue weighs very heavily on President Ramaphosa's shoulders at the moment, because even in the past, he's always had extensive, sometimes very difficult consultations, for example, with structures of the ANC across the provinces, across the different leagues, across the tripartite alliance as to who should be the next set of cabinet members, while he always also tried to reward those who had campaigned very hard for him. This time around, those dynamics are still there, but there's a huge new additional layer, and that is determining first what proportion of representation of the alliance coalition partners there will be in the executive, and then exactly what positions will be going to them. And these are huge issues. We know there are still contests unfolding with new small parties, very small parties in some cases, also joining the coalition.
The PAC, the last to join.
GNU, as this type of coalition is also known. There are indeed difficult questions, but yes, at the moment the president takes his oath in terms of the South African Constitution, that is when the cabinet ceased to exist.
There have been a lot of intricacies, if I can, and a lot said, including from the alliance partners, about this government of national unity and the ANC deciding to go into bed, if I can, with the Democratic Alliance. We know that the SACP, for example, has had its own fair share to say. President Ramaphosa doesn't have the liberty that he's always had in the past to choose whomever he wishes.
Yes, indeed. They still also, one talks informally with quite a few people, as I did this morning here on the lawns, there's still a sense of shock. How did South Africa get to this moment? And it takes some reasoning to get them to the point to understand governments the world over are always punished for not delivering, being distant, being seen to be arrogant or dishonest, etc., etc. And so it's the end of this big epoch of the ANC's 30 years of sole majority partyism within multi-party democracy that's really come to an end. And it is in this context that so much more dynamics enter, and President Ramaphosa in his speech gave ample recognition to the role of the opposition parties in bringing this alliance coalition together, and it was very clear that he also recognized that without them he would not have been president today. So it's a new epoch in that way, and opposition parties are recognized, were recognized fully, I believe, in his speech. In a way, like Nelson Mandela, I rechecked his 1994 speech this morning. One of his key phrases was, "On our own, alone, none of us can achieve anything." And although in very, very different circumstances, both for government, for institutions of democracy, and for the ANC, Ramaphosa repeated a similar kind of sentiment this morning.
Yeah, with much of the focus being on this cabinet, there were 30 in the cabinet that now no longer exists.
Exactly.
And there's been a lot of talk about, even in the past, whether the cabinet is too bloated, whether there should be a reduction. What do you make of that sentiment? Should there be a reduction? And I think specifically now, because I'm not saying everybody's got to be accommodated, but certainly you're not going to have opposition parties that don't want to see themselves in some of these key positions.
Yes, and of course, even if they're not formally part of the cabinet, but deputy ministers, I think there are about 32 in the current executive, not cabinet, but executive.
Yes.
So those positions certainly are there, and some of the small coalition partners will probably be aiming for one of those.
Yes.
But there are a lot of positions vacant. Even before this moment of non-existence of the cabinet, there were already, for various reasons, 9 confirmed vacancies. So, but many of those incumbent ANC cabinet members will definitely should not have any expectations of being returned to cabinet.
Yeah. Those are your Naledi Pandos, your Sisi Kotwas, your Praveen Gordhans, for
Indeed.
example. Yeah. KwaZulu-Natal, for example, we had a conversation a bit earlier on. You did indicate basically roughly gone proportional. Is that an indicator of what we're likely to see happen at a national level?
Probably, the agreement between these coalition partners certainly say that is roughly proportional. And if we look at the example of the KwaZulu-Natal executive that came about yesterday, was announced then, there was a definite indication of that proportionality of 4 of the executive seats going to the IFP, 3 to the ANC, 2 to the DA, including some important one like the Treasury, and 1 to the NFP. And that was really very proportional, approximately proportional. And if those relations are then pulled out towards...
Sorry, Prof, to cut you there. If you could bring the mic a bit closer. It's a bit noisy in our background.
if those proportions are then being drawn out into the national level, then... yes, 30 seats, and I do not think that this is the right moment to reduce it. There is a big outcry. Yes, reduce cabinet. I do believe cabinet is too big, but this is probably not the right moment because so much depends on hitting the ground running. There isn't going to be much popular patience with government sorting things out, getting things right, getting a program, etc. So they really have to hit the ground running. And we know when new departments are created, reorganizations happen, those ministers sometimes take 2 or 3 years to get the curtains and the new desks ready.
All right, just before we continue, Prof, I would like to say goodbye to our viewers on SABC2 as well as SABC3. Thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to continue with us as the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, makes his way to the Southern Lawns to address the multitudes of South Africans who came to witness this moment, his inauguration. You can certainly catch us on SABC News as well as SABC Plus and our other platforms as well. Prof, let's continue with our discussion. But very key would be whether to see this will be real power sharing or just something symbolic. Would the ANC want to hold on to key portfolios like finance, the economic cluster, for example?
Yes.
What are we likely to see?
Yes, it has often been speculated in the last 2 weeks that the ANC will definitely want to hand on to the economic cluster and the security cluster portfolios. But already we've seen quite a bit of speculation, like trade and industry perhaps could go to the DA. That's one of the arguments that I've heard. There's also speculation that the DA, both DA and ANC, could be happy for Inauguration to continue in his position. Of course, if he's available, we believe he is. And then, of course, people can be brought in from outside or from smaller parties who may still want to join this coalition. So there are lots of possibilities, but I won't be surprised if there is stability in terms of the finance ministry, some diversification probably going to the DA here and there and to the IFP. Because at first there was more sense of a form of confidence and supply arrangement with the DA in the early days of these negotiations. I suggested maybe they should get oversight over Parliament and the ANC can remain the government and the executive. But I believe that argument has changed. And now there is more specific focus on who can take which departments. And then,
but we've also seen quite a lot of sentiment being shared by, amongst others, the Patriotic Alliance.
We should almost not go there.
Okay.
Where yes, but let's do.
Okay.
Where they have specifically said they want Home Affairs because of their sentiment towards migrations and migrants, and they definitely want a grand portfolio. And Patriotic Alliance argues that this will be evidence to their people that they're being recognised for their contribution. And we know Gator McKenzie, for example, has also said he doesn't want tourists, seeing that as a minor portfolio. Patricia de Lille and Good, formerly and up to just now being Minister of Tourism. Of course, she is still there. Maybe there is continuity there. But I think when a party like the DA, in a powerful position, comes into a coalition like this, they would definitely not want to settle for symbolical and the lighter portfolios. We all know sports, culture, etc., women and people with disabilities, youth, those have been traditionally noted as softer, lighter portfolios. And of course, one can also mention that just in the presidency, there are 4 cabinet level positions, ministers just in the presidency. And if anywhere there is scope for rationalization of departments, you could possibly be there.
What, in your view, do you think would be the greatest challenge for this government of national unity? I mean, you've got a number of political parties that seemingly don't agree on some things. They're not going to agree on everything. But what would be the greatest challenge for this government of national unity to hit the ground running and ensure that the sentiments, for example, that have been shared by the now president of unity, of putting South Africans first, of ensuring that there's service delivery, there are jobs, and enough employment is created for everyone in this country. Certainly that is what informed the electorates they voted in this election, and that is something that has been acknowledged by the president.
Yes, I think it's imperative that very, very soon, almost at the point of announcing cabinet, there must also be consensus within among the core members of this coalition that what a central economic program is, because that is so at the heart of the problems of South Africa. The problems that a party like the ANC has been suffering, being seen not to be doing enough and sufficiently. So to get consensus on what a core consensual political program would be, so that the coalition can cohere around that, that will be so important, and that will help to subvert some of the criticisms. We know there's been so much pushback, and that is part of this challenge. Also in the ANC itself, and in NEC, there has been a lot of dissent, yes or for, but they come out without external unanimity, and we see the provincial coalitions holding in the elections. So there is a lot of challenge for the ANC to hold its act together and then to get coherence in the program for the coalition so that they can start making headway very soon, because there's going to be a lot of popular impatience with this coalition. They're not going to get 3 or 5 years to show, yes, we've achieved anything. I think people who do not quite see the reason and rationality in this coalition yet, although I believe they should. Nobody had an outright majority, it's as simple as that. Those ones who do not yet see that they can see there are dividends in that. And of course, for the individual political parties, there's a big challenge of retaining both a sense of their own party identity, because sooner or later they have to go back to the electorate.
That's right.
Then, but also have the coalition, have the so-called GNU as an entity with an own character, almost like an additional political party.
How do these political parties do that? Because already you're hearing a lot, or some sentiment, about some of that electorate that voted for a certain political party saying, you've sold us out, this is not the deal. But the reality is that no political party was able to govern on their own. they need assistance.
Exactly.
So how do you balance that versus the electorate saying, this is not what we voted for?
That is probably the exact problem challenge at the heart of the dynamics, this new political era that we're entering and testing now. Can parties create that synthesis to have a character as an achievement vehicle that they can hold out to their voters to say, this articulated with our mandate, the mandate you gave us, but it also served the bigger national good. We had services, we had better, higher economic growth, we had job creation of significance. If parties can do that, but it's a fine balance that we'll have to maintain and nurture throughout the process.
I don't know if I want to talk about, it's very early or way too early, years early to talk about if any of these political parties, have lessons to learn out of what came out of this election. It was quite clear that the electorate, at the heart of, I guess, how they voted, spoke to their basic needs. Would that be something that this government of national unity needs to put at the center? Because a lot of has been said about what we've seen happen in Tshwane, what we've seen happen in the city of Johannesburg. How confident can South Africans be that it's not going to be about, and in actual fact, President Cyril Ramaphosa did mention that in his speech when he spoke about political bickering. Less political bickering, more work, more services, and actual delivery for the populace.
Yes, this was actually a very concrete, down to the ground national and provincial election campaign.
Yeah.
Because it was bread and butter issues, it was services, conditions, living conditions, quality of life on the ground that I really believe carried the day, that it made or break the performance of political parties, especially that of the ANC. And so I think a big lesson is that local governments actually come nowadays right into national and provincial governments. If the big policies cannot be translated into improvement of conditions on the ground, services, living conditions, then national big, broad, generic messages really do not help one bit.
Yeah. As President Cyril Ramaphosa makes his way, I just heard the program director say he's about close. I think, let me have a look. Okay, I can't really see from where I am at the moment, but I do understand that he's making his way down the stairs from the amphitheater where they were, right here to the southern lawns. This is, of course, where we still have scores of people who are still gathered here, waiting to hear him address them. Do you think we'll have any indication from his speech which way we're likely to see this cabinet or this executive look like? A bit early on, he did speak about inclusivity, working together.
Yes.
Let's do it for the interest of South Africans. That's at the heart of why we are here now, because of this major political shift. But are we likely to hear that this afternoon as he talks to these people?
I think it will probably be translated into a popular message, thanking people for their support. And that on this occasion, it would really be support for the processes of democracy. And even the attendance, the very good attendance of the event this morning, and people's affirmation of the processes of voting. 58% is not great participation nationally, but still, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And so he will probably rather thank them for the support of the processes of democracy, of the affirmation and reaffirmation of voting, of parliament, of the provincial legislatures, of the executives as crucial institutions of democracy. Because we know, interestingly, now that there's more unity to the one side in parliament through this GNU formation, that the opposition, especially the EFF at this stage still, although they say they're turning a very orderly page, and the MK party, they are bringing challenges to the direct institutions at the heart of our democracy. And so people who affirm events like this today are also lending further support to the strengthening of democracy.